Okay, hi everybody. If you're wondering why I'm in a different room, I was like 3 pages in Twilight Hunger. I was reading it to you. Then my niece leaned on the bed, made the camera go off, and I got so mad. I said, man, Patricia, if you're going to freaking look at the calendar, that's what she was doing. She was looking at my calendar. Then I'm going to have to go into a different room because I don't want to risk the laptop going off again or the camera going off again. I can't believe I'm going to have to read all them pages again. But I'm going to read chapter 10 from Twilight Hunger. Morgan worked endlessly long into the nights, typing away on her computer or pacing and talking to herself as Dante watched her every move. He never saw her eat. She drank constantly, though, vodka mixed with whatever soft drink she had on hand. Whatever she was writing had her obsessed, and he sensed it had to do with him. He did not want to believe it had to do with his secrets being revealed to his enemies. His nocturnal visit had worsened things. He thought it might not have had she not seen the evidence of his kiss of possession with her own eyes. It had been gone the next day. She might even have believed she had imagined it all, but obviously she was afraid she had not. He couldn't get into the damned study to find out what she was working on, not without setting off alarms, which would alert both her and the police. Even if he could gain access, finding what he wanted would be difficult. He had been watching her night after night, writing feverishly. She saved everything on CDs and stored them in a large safe that hadn't been there before. It was hidden behind a mock bookcase. Its door opened away from the window through which he observed her every move, so he hadn't been able to see what else might be inside. Tonight he watched her tapping frantically, just as he watched her every night. He tried again, putting his hands to the floor beneath her to help him connect with her mind, see what she was seeing there, but without success. She had erected barriers of some kind. At least when she was awake, she wouldn't be able to sustain them while she slept. But damn if he was afraid to go to her in her sleep again, afraid he would lose control. He almost had the last time. She worked long into the night, and when she stopped, she leaned back in the chair as if utterly drained. God, she was beautiful, skin like alabaster, long straight hair in a shade of copper that shone as if it were a light source all its own. She was so thin. It had been 3 days since he'd been in the same room with her, touched her, and he was determined not to do so again. He would just watch her from outside, and sooner or later she would forget to turn a lock or set an alarm, or perhaps she would leave the house. His chance would come, but not tonight. She rose at last, glancing at her watch. He knew by the proximity of dawn, which vampires always sensed, it must be near 2 a.m. She was unsteady on her feet. He was beginning to think she was ill. In fact, whatever weakness he had sensed in her that first night seemed to be worsening by alarming degrees, as did the unnatural pallor of her skin. It worried him. God, it made his mind reel. Even feeling poorly, though, Morgan remembered to take the CD from the drive, slid it into its protective sheath, and put it in the blasted safe. It was frustrating as hell that he couldn't see the number she punched in, almost as frustrating as being unable to see the computer screen as she wrote for hour upon hour upon hour. Neither of those things was as frustrating as being so close to her and yet unable to touch her again, or sensing she was ill but not knowing why. He dreamed of her when he rested by day. It was unnatural for a vampire's day's sleep to be plagued with dreams, unheard of in his experience. He had never dreamed, not once, from the day Serafina had brought him over into the realm of night. Not once until he had first sipped from the font of Morgan da Silva. She shut the computer off and went upstairs, and he had to admit to feeling a surge of relief as he rose from his position outside the study's windows and went around to the rear of the house, clambering up the tree to watch her as he did every night. Serafina would probably laugh at him if she could see him behaving this way. She would probably attribute his childish antics to lust, and she wouldn't completely be wrong. But there was something more than desire at work here. There was this bond. He denied it, but he felt it all the same. He had to know how this woman knew him. She entered the bedroom and walked straight through it into the adjoining bathroom. When he had lived here, the bedroom had been a two-room suite. What had been his bath, she had converted into a walk-in closet. What had been an entire sitting room, she had converted into a bath fit for royalty. Most days she settled for a fast, brisk shower in the morning. The room had a three-sided frosted glass enclosed corner stall for that, but this time she didn't go to the shower. She went to the huge tub, cranked the faucet on, then paused, sitting on the edge as if exhausted by that simple motion. She didn't close the door. She never closed the door. Why the hell should she? Up here on the second floor. Why should she expect to be seen up here? He wanted to stay to watch her bath, but if he did, he would likely smash through the window and go to her in spite of his determination not to. Gathering his resolve, he leapt down to the ground. He went to the ocean to bathe himself and spent an hour walking along the beach, reasoning with his own mind, grappling with his own desire. By the time he returned to her balcony, he fully expected her to be in bed, sound asleep. She was sound asleep, but not in her bed. She was in the bath. Her pale body was limp, her head hanging to one side, hair dragging in the water. He thought she was dead when he threw open the balcony door and raced inside, through the bedroom and into the bathroom. Morgan. She didn't respond at all. He went to the tub, scooped her up into his arms, dripping wet, and carried her to the bed, snatching up a towel on the way. She was alive. He knew that at once, sensing the life in her, hearing its buzzing through her cells, that singing energy no one could name. It stopped singing at death. It sang louder and more clearly in the undead. She lifted her head weakly from his shoulder. Dante, I'm a dream. I'm only a dream, he told her. She relaxed in his arms. He carried her to the bed, toweled her off a little, and laid her down, quickly pulling the covers over her so he wouldn't have to look at her skin. Why are you so ill, Morgan? She smiled very softly. I'm dying, didn't you know? He went very still, his hands still clutching the blanket near her shoulders. His eyes shot to hers. Dying? I have this rare blood type, she told him. The doctors say everyone who has it dies young, but no one can seem to figure out why. The belladonna antigen, he whispered. Yes, that's the one. She let her head sink into her pillows, sighing. I didn't expect it to get this much worse so soon. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know it was fatal. Of course you did. You live inside me. You know everything about me, not this. She smiled very slowly. I'm so tired. Her eyes fell closed, her head tipping sideways, and a lock of hair falling over her eyes. I hope it isn't tonight, she whispered. I hope I have just a few more weeks. I need to finish, and then the awards. She drifted off, muttering words that might have made sense to her, but made none to him. He tried to look into her mind once she fell asleep. It was no longer closed to him, but she was so tired there was nothing to see. She slept like the dead, and that was no cliche in her case. Dante tried to sense the life force in her, to guess how long she had. It was weak. Hell, he didn't want to increase the bond between them still further, and yet he was compelled for some odd reason to help this woman. He knew better. His mind told him it would strengthen the bond between them. It would make this longing even more difficult to resist. And yet she was weak. She was fading. He sensed it. It came down to the simple fact that he did not want to let her go. He pushed back his sleeve, brought his wrist to his mouth, and bit down. His incisors sank into flesh, popped through the cartilage, pierced the vein, but not too deeply. Just a nick. He slid the thumb of his free hand over the wound, held it there as he moved his wrist to Morgan's lips. In his mind, he created the image of what he wanted her to do and sent it to her with the force of his will. Then he pressed his wrist to her mouth. She drank, her lips parted and closed over the punctures, warm and wet. She suckled him like a baby at its mother's breast. Desire shot through him like an electrical charge. She licked, swallowed, sucked harder. His breath came faster, and he grew hard with arousal. Finally, teeth grated in sweet anguish, he held her forehead with one hand and pulled his wrist away. He yanked a scarf from the nightstand, knocking a book to the floor in the process. As he twisted the scarf around his wrist, he glanced down at the title, Psychic Self-Defense. Dion Fortuneless. No wonder he could no longer so easily read Morgan's thoughts. He tied the scarf in a knot, tourniquet tight. It would do until dawn. Dawn was not far off, in fact. He glanced down at the woman on the bed. Her skin was pinker now, and she felt warmer to the touch. She would feel stronger tomorrow. But again, she couldn't know why. She had to remember him only as a dream, and damn it, he had to make some kind of progress in figuring out why and how she knew so much about him as she did. Maybe she was psychic. Maybe that was the explanation that so eluded him. Perhaps she picked up some kind of trace emanations he had left in the atmosphere of this place. Again, he looked at her. There was traces of his blood on her lips. Dante leaned forward, pressed his to them, kissed the droplets away. Her eyes fluttered open. How can I love a man who doesn't exist? She whispered. I do, you know. I love you, Dante. He felt his eyes widen in alarm. The last woman who said those words to me nearly cost me my life. I know, she whispered, rolling onto her side, eyes falling closed again. Laura Sullivan, the last from Dunkini. Dante went utterly rigid. How do you know that name? But she didn't answer. Morgan, but no. He could wake her, but that would be too risky. He would have to wake her completely in order to get any straight answer out of her, and then he would never convince her that this had all been just a dream. Instead, he laid his hands on her head, focused on her mind, probed and sought. What he found was her, beautiful, healthy, staring into a man's eyes, his eyes, and whispering, I'll never betray you the way Laura Sullivan did, Dante. Then he saw a screen behind them both, a light with moving pictures that rolled the tale. He saw the woman he had loved, the only mortal he had ever trusted with the truth of what he was. He saw her, and she looked the way she had looked then. She led a mob of villagers, all of them bearing torches, and she shouted at them, He's a beast, I tell you. He tried to drink my blood and admitted to me that what he is, and his friend Donovan too. We have to destroy them. Then the others shouted, Burn, 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 as they hurled their flaming clubs at the castle he shared with Donovan O'Rourke, his young protege. The screen went black in her mind. Once again, there were only the two of them. I already know what you are, Dante. I love you all the same. She leaned up in the dream, her lips pressing to his. Dante backed out of her mind in a rush, shook himself. It was true. She knew all his secrets, all of them. She slept heavily late into the afternoon, but when Morgan finally did awake, she woke all at once. Her eyes opened wide, and she sat up with a gasp, as if something had shocked her out of a deep sleep. Nothing had. She sat there blinking, pressing her hand to her forehead in anticipation of the rush of dizziness that always came when she sat up too suddenly, or stood up too suddenly, or ran up the stairs, or a thousand other things. It didn't come, though, and as she sat there, she slowly became aware of the way she felt. She felt better, almost good. Frowning, she flung her covers back, got to her feet, testing her balance, waiting for the weakness. It occurred to her that she didn't remember getting into bed last night. In fact, she In fact, the last thing she remembered was the bath and then the dream. Closing her eyes slowly, she let her breath rush from her lips. Dante, he had come to her again in her dreams. Squeezing her eyes a little tighter against a rush of sweet pain the memory brought, she tried to recall the details to her mind, but nothing came clearly, just the memory of his voice, speaking in its deep, velvety hush, soothing her, her hand cool on her face, his nearness, his realness. Oh, and his taste. God, had she really dreamt that? She was losing it, she knew that, completely enmeshed in the life of a man who didn't exist. Living his stories by day, dreaming of him by night. My God, she was an acclaimed screenwriter, and yet she didn't care. She cared about nothing except him, a man who could not exist. Something compelled her to check the French doors that led out to her balcony before she did anything else. They were locked from the inside. Of course they were. What had she expected? Sighing, she turned and walked into the bathroom. She stopped in the doorway, staring in at a tub still full of water. That's so odd. More than odd, a voice in her mind warned. It was completely unlike her to leave water in the tub. She was meticulous about this house, and had been ever since she had first come to know its one-time owner. To her, this place was Dante's headstone, his memorial, his marker. She honored it. Another sign of her looming nervous breakdown, she supposed, and what on earth had possessed her to sleep all day long? Hell, shouldn't complain. As good as she felt, she would be able to make up for lost time long into the night. Heading back into her bedroom, she decided to get out of the house for a little while, outside in the brisk spring air, maybe go for a walk down the beach. Give me a minute. Okay, I'm going to be able to still do it. And into the Norman Rockwell town a mile away. It could do her good. Besides, she couldn't remember the last time she had felt so capable of walking on the beach. She showered quickly, threw on a... Uh-oh, did I mention that this was chapter... I think I just passed another chapter. If I didn't, this is chapter 11. I'm so sorry if I didn't say it already. I get caught up in reading that. She showered quickly, threw on a pair of jeans and a cozy sweater, dressed her feet in a pair of white ankle socks and lightweight tennis shoes. She only towel-dried her hair, then left it loose, and she grabbed a handbag she rarely used and a jacket just in case. Then she trotted down the wide staircase with a sense of anticipation. She couldn't explain and didn't want to. At the bottom she caught herself, slowed her pace, mentally reminding herself that she would be breathless and panting if she didn't. She wasn't, though. Her heart wasn't even pounding hard. Maybe she was getting better. Maybe the sea air or those herbal supplements she'd been taking were finally kicking in. Maybe. She walked briskly through the house, out the back door, and down across the sloping green lawn toward the cliff. For a moment she simply stood there, staring out at the horizon. The sun was setting on the other side of the world. If she were on the west coast, she would watch it go down or over the ocean, a huge, blazing ball of fire quenching itself slowly in the cool embrace of the sea. She hadn't watched the sun set over the Pacific in years, but she could watch it rise over the Atlantic. And tonight she would watch the darkness gradually sealing over the water, changing its color as the sun set far, far behind her. She thought about the words that could capture such a sight and described it. The way the water kept changing, racing, it seemed to stay a shade darker than the sky. The sky went from robin egg to lilac, navy to midnight blue, the sea from turquoise to purple to ebony. The wind picked up as the sun sank lower, salty and even cooler. It pushed Morgan teasingly, daring her to push back. She stood there for a long time as the first few stars winked into life in the darkening sky. Sighing in appreciation, she inhaled the night air. It tasted good. She wasn't ready to go in just yet. Turning, she headed down the path along the edge of the cliffs to where it rolled downward to the shore at a gentler angle. When she reached the level of the shore, she followed the stony sand shoreline southward toward town. Easton was small, picturesque, but not enough so that it had become a tourist trap, not yet at least. The sidewalks to roll up, tended to roll up early. Morgan veered away from the beach onto the town's main road just north of the downtown area. She took the sidewalk and walked along, looking in the shop windows, most of which were already closed. A crowd drew her attention, and she glanced ahead, saw the line forming outside the movie theater, its small lighted marquee above their heads. The theater was small, 2 screens, a couple of hundred seats, no surround sound or giant screen. It was closed until showtime, and the doors opened a half hour before each show and then a minute sooner. Glancing up at the scrolling marquee, Morgan couldn't help but smile. Her latest film was showing, and underneath the title, the colored lights spelling out a message that scrolled past repeatedly. East Town's own Morgan Da Silva has earned a Best Screenplay nomination. See the film tonight. She blinked happily. Gee, it seemed she was something of a celebrity around town. Odd that no one had been out to the house to bother her. Of course, she kept a very low profile, rarely ventured out, had an enlisted phone number, and a whole lot of electronic security. Maybe people just respected each other's privacy out here. There had to be more to it than that. Part of her knew what, but most of her refused to acknowledge what that part of her knew. It was silly to believe that people avoided going anywhere near her house because it still emanated the predatory energy of the man who had once inhabited it. She still carried her jacket. Now she put it on, tugging up its lightweight hood and tucking her long hair inside it. She dug into her purse for the case that held her designer sunglasses and slipped them on as well. Then she moved ahead and took her spot at the end of the line. She felt a shiver go up her spine, as if a cold breath had just whispered across her nape, and she turned fast, but no one stood behind her. There was someone standing on the sidewalk, though, several yards away, in the direction from which she had come, a man. He stood in the shadows all the way at the end of the block on the corner, and the moment she looked his way, he slipped around the corner and out of sight. His stance, his salute, nothing but a dark shape in the moonlight. And yes, she thought, no, she was letting her imagination run away with her again. Miss, she turned and realized it was her turn to step up to the ticket window. Sorry, one please for Twilight Hunger. She slid a 10 across the counter, waited for the change, which was a crisp, clean 5 with her ticket on top. She'd been out so few times since coming here that the low ticket prices still surprised her. She tucked the 5 in her jeans pocket and held onto the ticket as she moved inside. She got a seat in the back and sat quietly while the previews began to roll. Morgan had thought she was the last one in, but the doors opened a few minutes into the previews and someone else entered. Again that chill danced over her spine, and Morgan turned to look his way. He was already making his way to the opposite side of the theater, but like her, he took a seat in the back row. He wore a long coat and its collar turned up around his face, and he too had dark glasses. It was foolish to think of Dante when she saw the stranger. It was just some other loony soul who preferred to keep his identity to himself. Dante didn't exist. The Dante of those journals, the one who had haunted her mind, and had never existed, only a slightly deranged man with a wild imagination and an excellent way with words. The Dante whose life was about to unfold on the screen at the far end of the room was a fictional character, a figment of his creator's imagination, enhanced perhaps by Morgan's own. But he wasn't real, and she had to get that through her head. He was not real just because she had been having vivid, visceral dreams about him, just because she had hallucinated those marks on her neck that night. They were there, her mind insisted. I checked in the bathroom mirror, and they were there, but gone without a trace in the morning, she reminded herself, and as vivid as her dreams had been lately, how could she be so sure that seeing those marks hadn't been just another part of one of them? Dante isn't real, she whispered to herself, and he most certainly isn't sitting in this dark theater watching me watch this film. By then, did she feel herself sinking more deeply into her seat as his story began to play out for the audience, and as the words across the screen told them all that she, Morgan Da Silva, had created it. Okay, I would read another chapter because I would actually have enough time to do it, but my battery's running really low, and that is what's keeping me from doing it. So I'm going to have to stop. I'm so sorry that I didn't say chapter 11 when I probably should have, because I don't think I actually did. I'll double look on the video just to make sure if I did. But if I didn't, when I caught on that I didn't, I was already like a page into that chapter, so I'm sorry. But if you actually like what you're, hearing, you could actually pick up the book for yourself. It might be a different cover though, because I got mine at Rite Aid, and every cover I've seen after that, it's different. You're lucky if you can actually find it though. So, bye everybody.